Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My dear students of Masters final year, from today I will start discussing on Walt Whitman, and the course title is Song of Myself. And before starting the core discussion, today I will tell you the life and works of Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was born in 1819 and spent his early childhood on a little farm on Long Island, which he always called by its American Indian name Paumanok. Presently, the family moved to Brooklyn and the boy grew up to love the noise and the crowd of the city streets even more than he loved the sea and the open country. In the city, Whitman received a little education of the common school kind, and he was by turns office boy, printer, teacher of a district school, carpenter, idler, reporter, and editor of a small newspapers. By inclination, he was something of a vagabond, not keeping any job longer than it pleased him, nor recognizing any social ties which interfered with what he considered his personal freedom. He made one leisurely journey down the Ohio to New Orleans, returning on foot by way of the Great Lakes and Canada, seeing practically the whole of the country as it then was, and making comrades of all classes of the laboring people. He came back to Brooklyn, worked at various jobs, wrote newspaper sketches and poems of a very ordinary kind, lived with his mother, and paid his board when he had the money. At 36 years of age, he published his first small volume, Leaves of Grass, making a radical departure from all his previous methods of writing. And from that time on, he followed an entirely new trail in literature. A noteworthy aspect of Whitman's life was his hospital service, a tender, helpful service, without pay and above reward. His soldier brother was wounded in 1862, and Whitman hurried to the front to take care of him. From the camp, he followed some of the stricken soldiers to Washington and found in that city a huge hospital, its surgeons and nurses overworked in caring for 50,000 sick and wounded, while thousands more came pouring in a ghastly flood after every battle. The pity of it all touched Whitman deeply, and securing a small position in a government office, he gave all his spare time to the hospitals, making himself useful in every possible way to the suffering soldiers. In his drum taps, he had caught the popular view of war, the brass bands, the flags, the trill of bugles, and the long roll of the drums, but now he sees, as he says, the real wear, which will never get into books. My dear students, let me now recite a few of his few lines from his poem. Aroused and angry, I thought to beat the alarm and urge relentless war, but soon my fingers failed me, my face dropped, and I resigned myself to sit by the wounded and soothe them, or silently watch the dead. When that generous service was ended, Whitman's health was broken, but he had gained a strength of his spirit unknown to him before. His later poetry is still crude and often spoiled by egotism, but a deeper rhythm, like the beating of a heart, creeps into it, and the coarseness vanishes together with the animal pleasure of mere physical sensations. He had learned that man has a soul also, and at times the soul appears to him as of more consequence than the body. For some 10 years, he was a government clerk in Washington, and for the remainder of his life, he resided in Camden, New Jersey. His Lips of Grass, which he republished 10 times with additions and corrections, brought him a very small income, and in the later years of his life, he was largely dependent on friends who gave freely because of his service and his genius. These later years, though troubled by pain and poverty, were not without their triumph. Though the public would not read his verses, a few good critics acknowledged his power, and his little house became the object of pilgrimages from all parts of America and England. With all his comradeship and love of crowds, Whitman was always secretive about himself, and he has the habit of posing in his poetry. The biographer is often baffled in his search for truth. Towards the end of his life, however, we have the testimony of many who visited Whitman, and almost without exception, these speak of him as one who had learned the discipline of living, who met suffering with patient heroism, and who left upon all his friends the impression of gentleness and sincerity. And now, my dear students, let me tell you what the principal works of Whitman are. Poems, Lips of Grass, drum taps, Passage to India, After All, Not to Create Only, As a Strong Bird on Pinions Free, Two Rivulets, November Bows, Goodbye My Fancy. Essays, Notes and Studies include Democratic Vistas, Memoranda During the War, Specimen Days and Collect. Letters and journals include Calamus, edited by Richard M. Buck, To und Dresser, edited by Richard M. Buck, Letters written by Walt Whitman to his mother, edited by Thomas B. Hearn, Walt Whitman's Diary in Canada, edited by William S. Kennedy, The Letters of N. Gilchrist and Walt Whitman, edited by Thomas B. Hearn, and the novel Franklin Evans, which was published in 1842, and the short stories The Herd Breed and Other Stories, 1927. And now, my dear students, I will tell you something praiseworthy, something on Whitman's poetry. I will tell you something on Whitman poetry which is somewhat of a critical evaluation. The publication of Lips of Grass in 1855 evoked a mixed reaction, virulent denunciation from one group and extravagant praise from another. One literary review called the work the expression of a beast, and another compared its author to a pig rooting among the rotten garbage of licentious thoughts. But Emerson found in the same poetry the wonderful gift, the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America has yet contributed. He felt that it possessed courage of treatment which delights and is inspired by Laird's perception. He called Whitman's poetry fortifying and encouraging. The worth of Whitman's poetry lies somewhere between the two extremes of reactions it evoked. While his poetry has always had and will continue to have a restricted audience, it is undeniable that it is the climax of the Romantic movement in the United States of America. It is the precursor of modern American literature, and it is, at least in part, dateless and universal. And with these few words, I would like to conclude my lecture for today. Thank you very much.